Hey guys, so some interesting developments here in Japan. Not really sure how things are actually going to work out, but there's been a national decree from the Prime Minister to all elementary, junior high, and high schools to close for the majority of the month of March. Some people have said the entire month and then into April. I just got a message from a mom showing an attachment that was basically the first 3 weeks of March. Um, so that leaves we school owners and staff to a degree in a bit of a predicament. I don't know what so on some of the forums I belong to, I've seen a few surveys. The majority of people are just going to be playing it by ear and not closing unless explicitly asked to do so by the government. So the policy seems to be most people are kind of have just an open door policy and say, if you don't want to come for the mandated time off, you're welcome to take makeup lessons when you come back. But because it's so long, it's realistic that people might just say, well, we're going to take March off. Again, there's nothing mandating that, but there might be some social pressures or you know how Japan is. So, I mean, I could probably squeak by. I would end up owing some money to my wife, most likely. I've got some wedding money coming through, and a lot of my students still haven't paid for February, actually. Um, so my point is, it's a little bit of pressure here for English school owners because it's still kind of early days. We don't really know what the trend is going to be if students are just going to automatically kind of by extension not go to any of their extracurricular activities because school is off. I mean, we're talking about like millions of students, the entire country, um, elementary through high school. I don't know if the JUCOs will be quite as affected because a lot of them have a kind of lump sum payment policy, usually like 6 months, sometimes up to a year, or sometimes 48 lessons. But everyone's different. So that yeah, I mean any type of extracurricular business that's charging on a monthly basis, it's pretty scary going into March. But this is, part of the risk you take when you open a business. And I mentioned before, how like utterly dependent I am on the local community and the kindness of my students and their parents to continue coming. So on the one hand, it's a very stable business model because generally speaking, once someone signs up, you can expect them to keep coming anywhere from a year to well, I have a handful of students who've been here since the beginning. I think I have, off the top of my head, two students who've been here for 5 years now. But on the other, if the prime minister suddenly says, all elementary, junior high, and then high schools have to close, across the nation, that's kind of undermines the stability. So it's also it's also really kind of a wake up call to diversify more. I mean, you know, worst case scenario, nobody between the ages of 6 and 18 comes in March. It's gonna suck. It might wipe out a chance to go home this year. It won't be the end of the world, but it's definitely going to be a very lean, kind of stressful month, and take me a while to recover. Um, but it's also kind of an impetus to really seriously pursue other avenues of income. Um, Personally, at some point in my life, preferably sooner than later, I would like to be financially independent. I'm not alone in that. I think most people would, given the option. Hey, would you like to be financially independent? The majority of people would probably say yes to that. But of course, there's a lot of logistics in the interim and a lot of effort that has to be placed and sustained in the right way. So I've been happy with my school's development, but this is really just like a wake up call. Like, dude, you can't just rely 100% exclusively on this one channel and expect things to constantly be okay all the time forever. Generally, English speaking is a pretty good deal. I mean, even during the Lehman shock, the global financial crisis, and the Fukuoka disaster a few years later, I didn't see so much as a hiccup in my job security or the number of students. And this one's definitely temporary, but a lot of businesses run on very small margins. Thankfully, English teaching, the margins are actually pretty big. It's more about human capital and time commitment, because you're not really, ordering, tons of materials for each student. It's not like running a restaurant or something like that, where the overhead is just so high per customer that you're lucky to make 5% or something, 10% off of their bill. But yeah, it's definitely a reason for concern. Like I say, most schools are just kind of just staying afloat, saying, look, we're just going to keep our doors open and work with people. Worst case scenario, nobody comes. Best case scenario, most people come, and there's a few makeup lessons, and you might have to just say, it's okay this time to a few other people, which I've done before. I mean, it's better to take a short-term loss, because it almost always equals a long-term gain, and that's what you want. It's also impetus to kind of just save more money. Now that my reform loan is out of the way, and generally speaking, the monthly revenue is pretty decent. There's kind of actually just today I was getting kind of full tilt into my tax paperwork and getting my receipts and card statements together, and just looking at my spending habits and kind of realizing that, well, yeah, I mean, most of them are going to be tax deductible, which is really, really, really helpful as a business owner. If you're not careful about that, you can just get hosed, end up paying so much money for the next year and change. At the same time, though, it's like, really, is it really going to be that big of a deal if I have to miss a month of work? Where's all my money? And it's kind of, so there's definitely like a sweet spot where you want to have a better lifestyle, but that also, realistically, if you're making more money, you should also be saving more. But I've just been in this mode since opening where it's just been, pretty much hand to mouth, and trying a bunch of business ideas and kind of upgrading things like buying a car and, online courses and equipment for the school and business ventures and things. You don't really realize sometimes how much is actually going out the door, in spite of how much is coming in. So sometimes it's good in life to just have a bit of a wake-up call and kind of reassess where you are and kind of the reality of your situation. I think whenever we enter financial difficulty, or even kind of approach the threat of it, it's always a little bit of a surprise. As human beings, we tend to grow accustomed to the status quo of our life, whatever that is. It could be, a 16-year-old working a few nights at McDonald's a week. That's still money for them. It's still income. It's still something they kind of assume will be there. Or it could be, someone like myself running a small business with a family, and a lot invested in it. In either situation, if that's threatened, it's kind of like, whoa, it kind of makes you remember, that this is causing me to kind of look back on the early days when I first started. Money was always on my mind, like how to get more students, how to reduce costs. I would actually unplug my modem at night because it was still drawing power. The little light, I was worried about that. I was like, oh, unplug that, I don't want to waste any money. And I mean, I rode a bicycle and lived very modestly for years, and there's no reason not to maintain that mentality within reason. You don't want to, I guess, go thinking too highly of yourself just because for the time being you have a good income and things are going well, to just assume that that's always going to be the case. Things can happen very suddenly, You know, every day people go out the door and they never come home again because something happened. So it's yeah, something to keep in mind. Luckily, you know, the university will be starting in April, and once this corona hysteria kind of blows over, things should settle back to normal more or less. I could probably expect a few more new signups in the coming months, so on and so forth. But yeah, this is definitely, like I've said, been pretty big wake up call, and I need to start, I think, taking the same approach to other business ideas that I had when I started the school. It doesn't have to be this like consuming, like stressful, constant emotional investment, but I think it does have to be very strategic. You know, you need to have kind of a long-term plan, and you need the logistics, right? Like you need to think about, okay, how can I actually satisfy this step in the plan, and how does that contribute to the overall goal? And you know, am I wasting energy on things? You know, am I spending all day long thinking about what my logo should look like when I could just decide on something simple and then, you know, spend all day long, you know, recruiting clients or researching the competition and gathering really vital, important data, you know, like the 80-20 rule where 20% of what you do brings about 80% of the results. It's very, very easy to reverse that, where you end up spending 80% of your time and energy only to get 20% or often less of the results that you want. I don't know, it's weird. There's a Grant Cardone talks about whenever you wake up, you need to be hungry, right? That sense of hunger. And it's a good analogy. You think about like if you've just had a nice meal and you're kind of relaxing on the couch, looking at your phone, you don't really feel a pressing need to continue to make effort. You just kind of feel, yeah, it's cool, you know. And I think a lot of us go through our life like that. Not always, but I think for the majority of people in the developed Western world, we live in a kind of Jeff Bezos called it what was it stasis society, where we kind of reach a level of stasis and it doesn't go up or down too much, and it kind of just cruises along at that, you know, state. And sometimes it's not really a bad thing. Japan is a very static society in that regard, but you know, the fact is, what you have now eventually will not be yours. It will come and it will go, and it's really important to kind of be aware of your relationship with things and what's happening, and whether or not what you're doing now is contributing to a better or a worse future. So I think right now I'm probably in the middle. So hopefully, you know, things will be totally fine in the coming weeks. I'm just trying to play it cool. That's a very important skill in Japan. You don't want to go making waves and calling parents. Are you going to come next month? I need your money. You know, just play it cool. If they decide to take time off, say, okay, you know, we can do makeup lessons. If they say, well, we're just not going to come in March, say, all right, see you next month. You know, it's much better than getting emotional and crazy and trying to squeeze their business out of them for the month. That tends to backfire. It's much better to just play it cool, be cool-headed and objective. You know, it's not like the place is burning down and I have to start from zero. It would have been only 3 classes for every group lesson, so it would have been a pretty light month anyways. But it hasn't started yet. It might be totally fine. I expect it's going to be something of a gray zone. I'll probably have some kids that are just like, yeah, we're just not going to go. Or I should say, not a gray zone, but kind of mixed results. But we'll have to wait and see. So anyways, I see my son coming up here, so I'm going to go say hi to him. And I'll keep you guys updated. I guess I'll throw one out next week once I have some data.